Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule.
There are many countries that don't allow the planting of GMOs, but very few that say you shouldn't eat GMOs. Taiwan passed a law saying you can't serve GMOs in school meals.
Jeffrey Smith's Genetic Roulette, the documented health risks of genetically engineered foods, part 2 of 3. Continue watching to find out more.
Greetings, respected viewers. I am Kapono. Pure-hearted, loud people send you sincere greetings with God's love. We are delighted to have you join us for part 2 of our 3-part series entitled Jeffrey Smith's Genetic Roulette, the documented health risks of genetically engineered foods. In 2003, Jeffrey Smith founded the Institute for Responsible Technology, or IRT, which is the world leader in educating policymakers and the public about genetically modified foods and crops. The Institute investigates and reports genetically modified organisms, or GMO, risks and their impact on health, the environment, economy, and agriculture, as well as problems associated with current research, regulation, corporate practices, and reporting. Jeffrey Smith's book, Genetic Roulette, the documented health risks of genetically engineered foods, was later published in 2007. As a leading consumer advocate promoting healthier non-GMO choices, Jeffrey Smith was named the 2017 Person of the Year by Masters of Health magazine. Let us now continue our interview with Jeffrey Smith, who explains how GMOs first enter the marketplace and our food supply.
They came on big time in 1996. There was a tomato that came 2 years before that, but it quickly left the market in 1997. But in 1996, he started with the soy and the corn, and a little bit of canola, and that started to grow from there. Now, the reason it's on the market is the White House had instructed the FDA to promote GMOs because they thought that by creating GMOs, it would increase the U.S. exports and settle the trade deficit. And the opposite happened. People rejected GMOs, and we actually reduced our exports.
Are there some countries that are completely GMO-free? Are there any countries where GMOs are completely outlawed and foods are therefore safer to eat?
There are many countries that don't allow the planting of GMOs, but very few that say you shouldn't eat GMOs. Taiwan passed a law saying you can't serve GMOs in school meals. That was great. Zambia actually said we don't want to import food aid that's GMO. But the rejection of GMOs has largely been on the planting of the GMOs. But many people think that Europe doesn't allow GMOs in the food supply. Actually, it's the European food companies that said no to GMOs because it was the European consumers that said no. The tipping point of consumer rejection was achieved. That was when Unilever said, we're going to take GMOs out of our European brands. The next day, Nestle's. The next week, virtually everyone else. The tipping point was consumer rejection driving the food companies to get rid of them. So the same companies that took out GMOs in Europe continued to sell GMOs to the unsuspecting American consumer and consumers around the world. So our Institute for Responsible Technology has been focused on educating people around the world about the health dangers, and a tipping point has started in the United States.
We'll take a few moments for some uplifting messages and be back soon here on Supreme Master Television.
It's not just an agriculture issue, it's not just a food industry issue, it's an ever-living creature issue.
And if we don't do anything within a decade, every single major crop with any significant market size is going to be genetically modified, and we're not going to know it.
Welcome back to our interview with Jeffrey Smith, author of Genetic Roulette, the documented health risks of genetically engineered foods. We asked Jeffrey, if GMO foods have been grown in our soil, can that soil eventually be cleaned so that it becomes completely GMO-free?
You have the GMO problem, you have the Bt toxin problem, and you have the Roundup or herbicide problem. We know that just from the GMOs themselves, in a laboratory, part of that gene transferred into bacteria. We don't know how prevalent that is. Part of the genes transfer into macroorganisms in the soil. So that means you have a piece that's now incorporated perhaps into another species. Then you have the Bt toxin, which is produced in every cell of the plant, which kills insects. It can bind with clay and remain active in the soil for months, and it can be washed into the rivers, etc. And then you have the Roundup and other toxic herbicides that kill weeds. Roundup can bind with minerals in the soil and then become reactivated as it gets separated and becomes a weed killer all over again. It doesn't degrade very easily. You need specialized enzymes in the soil, certain pH, certain biomatter. Otherwise, it can take a long time. The longest reported half-life, which is the time it takes to reduce and degrade into 50%, was over 22 years. But usually it's just many months or a few years. So it does take some time depending on what aspect it is, but you can actually transform a field. And there's some friends of mine who are great agronomists and scientists who are looking for biological remediations where you can spray on the ground and it just see if it eats up the glyphosate, if it transforms the soil. It changes the entire biome of the soil. And that needs to be remediated. So you can't just stop and hope that it gets better in a fast period of time. It may do it eventually, but there needs to be some kind of remediation in order to give the health back to the soil.
So, have GMOs entered the oceans? Are they affecting sea creatures?
They are fed to farmed fish. So pellets with soy, etc., are delivered into these netted areas. And so, yes, they've certainly entered the ocean. So you have the chemical pollution and you have the GMO pollution. What I'm particularly concerned about are the genetically engineered fish. Are the genetically engineered salmon, and it's being sold in Canada so far. The FDA just approved a facility in Indiana to produce the fish. So they're growing them in tanks, but it might be that fish will be put into a fish farm, and there's hundreds of thousands of fish that escape fish farms, so we might end up populating the oceans with genetically engineered salmon. Now the salmon is engineered with genes from another salmon and from an Arctic eel that cause the salmon's growth hormone to be constantly on. Usually it shuts down for the off-season, giving the animal a break, but this pumps it out. So there are times that it grows a lot faster. So in 18 months, the genetically engineered salmon might be a lot bigger than the natural salmon. So it goes to market more quickly. Well, what's happening with the hormones in the animals? Can I eat it? Is it safe? Well, if you look at the actual research that's so bad, you find out that it has more of a particular hormone that's linked to cancer. It has a higher allergic potential, but they use so few numbers in their samples that it wasn't statistically significant. And now they're going to feed it to the entire population.
What eye-opening findings that give us even more reason to adopt the safe, life-sustaining, GMO-free vegan lifestyle. We thank Jeffrey Smith for sharing his in-depth knowledge and look forward to learning more in part 3 of this series. For more information on Jeffrey Smith and his work, please visit responsibletechnology.org. Loving viewers, it's been a pleasure to have you with us today. Join us again on Friday, August 16 for part 3 of Jeffrey Smith's Genetic Roulette, the documented health risks of genetically engineered foods. Coming up next is Suchi Medical Foundation's Healthcare Professionals on Optimal Wellness, part 3 of 3, right after Noteworthy News, here on Supreme Master Television. May God bless you abundantly with good health, noble aspirations, and gallant spirit.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/HL.
Nos programmes offrent plusieurs langues. Veuillez visiter suprememastertv.com/schedule et suprememastertv.com/HL.
Nuestros programas ofrecen varios idiomas. Visiten suprememastertv.com/schedule e suprememastertv.com/HL.
Nossos programas oferecem vários idiomas. Acesse suprememastertv.com/schedule e suprememastertv.com/HL.
हमारे कार्यक्रम पेश किए जाते हैं कई भाषाओं में। कृपया देखें suprememastertv.com/schedule और suprememastertv.com/HL。
我们的节目提供多种语言，请看 suprememastertv.com/schedule 和 suprememastertv.com/HL。
Rancangan kami menawarkan banyak bahasa. Sila kunjungi suprememastertv.com/kehadapan-schedule dan suprememastertv.com/kehadapan-HL.
برامجنا متوفرة بالعديد من اللغات. يرجى زيارة suprememastertv.com/schedule و suprememastertv.com/HL.
Наши программы предлагают много языков. Пожалуйста, посмотрите suprememastertv.com/schedule и suprememastertv.com/HL.
మా కార్యక్రమాలు అందజేస్తున్నాయి అనేక భాషలలో. దయచేసి చూడండి suprememastertv.com/schedule మరియు suprememastertv.com/HL.